Don't date a white man just for status. A white man is not going to change your life. We are just the same as a black guy. A white man can be broke. A white guy can cheat. A white man can have a wife and pretend he is not married.
To know that he took advantage of her was just, it was so heartbreaking. And in that moment, I 100% fell out of love with him. And it was like the spell that was on me had been broken.
She said that the therapist and the professionals who treated him said that it was the worst gambling addiction they had ever seen in their career. Because why are you traveling constantly when you don't have money? Why are you living a jet-setting lifestyle with no financial stability? Like, why? Love is not by force. Love does not ruin you financially. Love does not gamble away your livelihood. Love does not isolate you from family. Love does not lie, manipulate, and drain you. Cash flow is survival. Cash is king. And when someone plays with that, they are playing with your life. He got everything he wanted. Her money, her support, and the green card he needed. And then he just walked away, showing no empathy, showing no remorse, no regard for her feelings. Hey loves, Happy New Year. In my last video, I talked about a woman who was scammed out of $2 million by her previous husband. That story was shocking, disturbing, and honestly still hard to process. But what surprised me more is that this type of financial abuse and emotional manipulation is happening far more often than we like to admit. And that brings me to today's video, a video that has gone totally viral on TikTok called the Danish Deception. This is another real life scam that left another young woman thousands of dollars out of pocket, emotionally drained and deeply betrayed. The story is narrated by a woman called Unravel, who shared her experience in a 26-part TikTok series, with each video being at least 10 minutes or close to 10 minutes. That's over 4 hours of content. And yes, I listened to every single one so you don't have to. I'll be inserting some of the clips as we go along, and I'll have the relevant footage on screen so that you can see it all for yourself. My goal today is to break this story down, summarize what happened, and most importantly, highlight the red flags that were missed along the way. Because there were many and they were not subtle. My goal is also to show you that these scammers are not as smart as they want you to believe. And that if you stay alert, the signs are there to be spotted. I always say this whether we're talking about divorce, toxic relationships, or financial scams. The red flags are usually there from the very beginning. The problem is not that they don't show up. The problem is that they are ignored. Just like the $2 million scam I covered in my previous video, this same video follows the same pattern. Charm first, urgency next, then isolation, then the financial pressure. And slowly, reality starts to blur. If you haven't watched my previous video yet, I strongly suggest that you do. There are so many lessons in it, especially for women who are navigating relationships, marriage, online dating, and long distance relationships. This video is not about shaming, it's not about blaming. It's about awareness, it's about protection, and it's also about making sure that my community knows the warning signs before it's too late. Let's get into it. Alright, let's rewind to how this all started. This story begins in June 2022. Onyeka was exhausted. She was working 2 jobs as an accountant and a realtor, grinding non-stop, and she decided that she needed a break. So she books herself a holiday with a friend to Croatia. While she's on the beach one day, she notices this man. According to her, this was not just any man. She said he looked like he had walked straight out of a Calvin Klein ad. Tall, about 6'3", blonde, chiseled, muscles everywhere. Full package. She says she was completely taken aback. Then he approaches them and offers to buy them drinks. He introduces himself and says he's originally from Denmark. Naturally, conversation starts flowing. He tells her he works in real estate and that he's a chief commercial officer for an ad tech company that does marketing for real estate firms. Very polished, very impressive, high status career. All the right buzzwords. As they get ready to leave, Onyeka makes a bold move. She asks for his Instagram. Now let me pause here. Personally, I've always believed that men should make the first move. Call me old-fashioned, but I think it matters. When women love, we love deeply, emotionally, and wholeheartedly. Men, on the other hand, are wired to pursue, to chase, to hunt. That dynamic is important, but anyways, Onyeka went for it. And from that moment on, he doesn't stop messaging her on social media. Constant communication and consistent attention, no gaps, no silence. She eventually heads back to the United States, and almost immediately that same weekend, he asks her if she wants to fly out to Ibiza to see him. So she actually rejects the Ibiza invite because she says she doesn't want to come across as desperate. They continue talking on Instagram, and at this point they still haven't exchanged phone numbers. Everything is just happening through social media. A few weeks later, he messages her again and says he has a work conference in Monaco and that it would be nice if she joined him. He reassures her that he would take care of all the flight expenses and everything else. Onyeka said her first thought was, wait, Monaco? The Monaco? She tells him she needs time to think about it. She reflects, she ponders, and eventually she said, what the heck? I'll go. This is where things start getting extremely concerning. She sends him a photo of her passport details, and only after that does she finally give him her phone number. Now let me pause right here because this is very important. Giving your passport information to a man you just met on holiday is very risky. Onyeka could have booked the tickets herself. He could have transferred the money to her. She could have done it herself. Or he could have done it and she could have filled the details in later on. There is absolutely no reason you should give a stranger your passport details. Infatuation can cloud judgment, and this is the perfect example of that. And honestly, at this point, I thought, what a brave girl. Because she was flying to Monaco. She wasn't meeting him in Dallas, in her comfort zone. At the end of the day, he's still a stranger. They've only just met on holiday. Briefly. She wasn't meeting him in surroundings where she was familiar with. With the level of money and status that he claimed he had, he should have been the one flying to her to see her in Dallas first, in my opinion. Her sister was so concerned that she even suggested putting AirTags in her suitcase. Ladies, please hear me clearly. Safety always comes before romance. Always. Onyeka also shared with him that she had never been in a serious relationship before. He, on the other hand, shared with her that he had only just come out of a 4-year relationship 4 months ago. According to him, the relationship with his ex ended because she wanted to have children and he wasn't ready. Now, I don't know about you, but 4 months to heal from a 4-year relationship, that alone should have been a pause moment. Then comes another jaw-dropping moment. While they're talking on the phone, he casually says something along the lines of, if we ever get married, you're going to meet the Queen. She's confused and she asks him what he means, and that's when he tells her that his family has a royal title. Yes, according to him, he's royalty. She goes to Monaco, and while she's out there, she attends one of his work events. She talks about how fascinated she was watching him operate in that environment. The confidence, the professionalism he displayed. Everything she saw only reinforced the image that he had been carefully building from the very beginning. He continues to woo her hard. We're talking 5-star hotels, the kind that cost around $2,000 a night. Even she tells him that she's never experienced this kind of luxury before. Luxury surroundings, high-end restaurants, expensive wine, the full fantasy experience. And then while they're out at dinner, caught up in the atmosphere, Onyeka tells him that she's in love with him. Now ladies, call me old-fashioned, but I truly do not believe in telling a man that you love him first. Especially not in a situation like this. You've been talking on social media for weeks, and now you finally met him in person. You're abroad, you're in a luxury hotel, in a fancy restaurant, drinking wine completely swept up in the moment. That's not the time to drop the love word. And his response to her is very telling. He says to her that he doesn't want to say it in that moment, and that he wants to have his own special moment to say it. And this is why I always say, before you say you love someone, take your time to study them. There is no rush. Take your time. Because sometimes what you're really in love with is the experience, the lifestyle, the attention, the environment around you, not the person himself. Then goes even further and tells him that your money is great, but if you lost it all tomorrow, I would still be with you. She says the money is just a cherry on the sundae, and that she's there for who he is as a person. And And he responds to her by saying that what matters to him most is respect and loyalty. I want you to remember that word loyalty. We'll come back to it later. After dinner, he takes her on a shopping spree. They go into high-end stores like Dior. She sees an expensive bag that she really likes, but she decides not to choose it because she doesn't want to come across as someone who is there for his money. Instead, she settles for a pair of $200 glasses. And his reaction to this, he looks at her and thinks, wow, damn, you're cheap. She laughs it off and says that she's just a simple girl, even though deep down she really wanted the Dior bag. They go back to their different destination, and after time they kept talking, and eventually he flies to Dallas to meet her. This is the first time he's stepping into her world. He meets her family and friends, and while they're out for a meal, he pays for everyone. Again, generosity, presence, charm. But here's where things get interesting. While they're at the meal, he casually mentions something to her cousin, something that even Onyeka wasn't aware of. He says that he was once an Olympian. Not only that, he claims he won 2 medals, 1 gold and 1 bronze. She was shocked. This was brand new information to her. And instead of questioning it, she thought, wow, he's so humble. She liked that he hadn't mentioned it before. She found it attractive. Now let me pause here. It's not every day you meet an Olympian. That is not small detail. That is something you ask questions about. You ask, which year, which sport, which country. You ask for photos. You drill further, especially in the age of Google. But because she was already deeply infatuated, she didn't probe. She didn't do her homework. She took it at face value. When it was time for him to leave Dallas, she cried uncontrollably. At this point, the emotional attachment was fully locked in. She tells him she's ready to be with him. In her mind, he's already established in Denmark. And this is where I need you to pay attention. So logically, she's thinking it makes more sense for her to move to him. But he shuts that down immediately. He tells her he would rather move to her in Dallas. He says that he doesn't want to take her away from her family and friends. He says it makes sense for him to relocate to her since his family lives far away from him in Denmark anyways. And this is where I need you to pay attention. These men are always running from something. This pattern is not new. It's the same thing we saw in the previous video I covered with Dr. Wilkinson. Dr. Wilkinson told Charissa that he was fully established, working in an emergency department in the hospital in Atlanta, and that he was deeply rooted in his career. Yet, when she said she was willing to move to be with him, he suddenly insisted that he would come to her in Florida instead. This is the same script but different characters. Because here again, this man claims he's established in Denmark, that he's successful, he's connected, he's got high status, and don't forget, most importantly, he's royalty. But suddenly, it's no problem to leave everything behind. A royal? It's that easy? No hesitations, no complications, no logistics. He's ready to uproot his entire life instantly. Then there's another inconsistency. This is the same man who said he left his ex because she wanted kids and he didn't. And now all of a sudden he's talking about having kids with Onyeka and planning a future together. So which one is it? This is how the cracks start to show with these con men. Stories don't line up. The timelines shift. Their values conveniently change depending on who their audience is. So now we move to October 2022 and this is where everything shifts. She calls him one day and he tells her that he's had a very stressful day. He explains that the apartment complex that he bought has serious issues. According to him, it's a major safety concern for tenants and will cost $50,000 to fix. He tells her he's going to ask his dad for a loan. A few hours later, he calls her back and says that his dad rejects giving him that loan. She immediately feels bad for him. In her mind, this is a man that has been generous, kind to her, who has paid for her trips, hotel, food, shopping. So she offers to loan him the money. His response is interesting because he says to her he would never in a million years borrow money from her. A couple of days pass and then he tells her that he's not going to be able to come back to see her in Dallas until he finds the remaining $6,000 he needs for the balance. At this point, she starts panicking and she insists on loaning him the £6,000 so that he can sort the balance out and come and see her in Dallas. This time he accepts, saying this will be the only time. And right here, guys, is where the financial manipulation begins. He didn't ask for money immediately. He didn't start with desperation. He set the stage first. He showed her a lavish lifestyle. 5-star hotels, expensive meals, shopping sprees, luxury travel. Scammers often use other people's money to fund this lifestyle at the very beginning. It creates awe, it creates admiration, it lowers your guard. By this point, she had already told him she loved him. She had already told him that if he lost everything, she would still be there. She had emotionally insured him. And once he knew he had her heart, he made his move. He created the crisis. He positioned himself as reluctant. Oh, I don't want it. Oh, no, no, no. He then allowed her to offer. All that is not accidental. It's strategic. It's their strategy. He didn't chase the money. He let the money chase him. And that is exactly how these scammers begin. And let this sink in. At this point, they had been together for less than 3 months. 3 months. Less than 3 months, and money has already entered the relationship. That alone is a massive red flag. Because healthy relationships do not involve financial rescue missions this early. This wasn't partnership. This was the beginning of a scam unfolding in slow motion. So he comes back to Dallas again, this time over Thanksgiving, and he finally meets her parents. And almost instantly they fall in love with him. He's charming, polite, attentive, saying all the right things. Her parents ask him about the Olympics and the medals. And this is where his storytelling goes to another level. He tells them that he gave the gold medal to his mom and that he donated the bronze medal to charity. Now let's be serious for a second. Olympians guard their medals like sacred objects. Those medals represent years of sacrifice, pain, discipline, and national pride. People just don't give them away casually. But to Onyeka, this sounded like humility, generosity, selflessness. She thought to herself, wow, this man is incredible. During this visit, her dad mentioned that his mom had recently passed away. He talks about the funeral arrangements and that he says that the funeral will be held May 2023. This man looks at her dad and says, we'll be there. And that impressed Onyeka very deeply because this wasn't going to be a fun holiday. This would mean traveling, going to her village, being present for grief and her family. In her mind, that signaled commitment and long-term intention. And at that point, she says to him, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. To which he responds, I want to marry you someday. He then starts to ask her about what kind of ring she wants, and they talk about ring shopping. Guys, at this point, they had only been together for 4 months. Yet the conversation had already jumped to marriage and rings. She was excited that he wanted to learn more about her culture. She liked that he got on well with Nigerians and that he liked Afrobeats and that he seemed comfortable in her world. But let me say this clearly. Getting along with your culture, dancing along to your music, being friendly with your people, that is not extraordinary. That is the bare minimum for someone who claims to love you. And again, we can see the pattern. Fast attachment, grand promises, future planning far too early. This wasn't romance, this was fast-tracking intimacy, and it was setting the stage for what's to come next. So now we get to December of that year and they had planned to spend Christmas together, but suddenly he cancels. He tells her he has a bad back and needs surgery December 21st. I want you to remember that date, December 21st, because it becomes very important later. She offers to fly to Denmark to be with him and support him during surgery. He immediately pushes back and says he doesn't want her meeting his family under those circumstances and that there's a language barrier. Now pause. A wealthy, royal European family not speaking English? Let's be serious, that alone should have raised questions. Another red flag. Then the story gets heavier. It says his dad is sick in hospital, diagnosed with leukemia, and he says that he's had a huge argument with his sister, and so it's just not the right time for her to come. Crisis after crisis after crisis. All of a sudden, a few days after his back surgery, he decides he doesn't want to spend a festive period in Copenhagen, Denmark, and that he would rather go to Paris away from family and stress. And guess what? She agrees to go with him and ends up covering most of the cost of that trip. At this point, Onyeka did admit that she didn't even think about the $6,000 that he owed her, and she did admit that it's something that she should have thought about before covering the cost for the Paris trip. Now let's talk timelines. He claims he had a back surgery on December 23rd. He says he had a massive fight with his sister on the 23rd. And by December 27th, he's flying to Paris. Sightseeing, walking around, living life. Someone that's just had a back surgery. Anyone who has ever had a back surgery knows recovery takes weeks, sometimes months. A quick Google search confirms that. But somehow, this man is traveling internationally and sightseeing days later. And still the alarm bells were not ringing loudly enough. Why? Because she was so desperate to be with him. And when desperation enters, logic exits. At this point in her storytelling, Onyeka admits that she should have noticed the red flags at this point. But for me, the red flags were already there from the beginning, long before we got to this point. She just decided to ignore them. She decided not to probe, not to question certain things that he said, not to do simple Google search. At the end of the Paris trip, he asks her how she will feel about the meeting with an immigration attorney to understand the process. They both speak to an immigration attorney who explains to them that after marriage, it will take 18 months to get permanent residency sorted. Both of them feel like 18 months is a very long time, especially since the countdown only starts after marriage. And that's when he says to her, I would marry you tomorrow. And she says the same thing back. Now, this is where the story takes a turn. Onyeka pauses and says, this is where I drop a big bomb. She reveals in the story that he's not her ex-fiancé, but rather this man that she's talking about is her ex-husband. And at this point, I'm thinking to myself, there has been so many bombs dropped before this reveal. I mean, the fake wealth, because a wealthy man would not be asking you for $6,000, a royalty, fake Olympics, fake surgery, financial manipulation, immigration pressure. And let me remind you, all of this happened in 4 months. 4 months. Since they had decided to get married to each other, they had a 6-hour crash call where they talked about everything they wanted for their future, from the marriage to children, religion, their long-term plans. And by the end of that call, he asked her, do you still want to marry me? To which she said yes. Now, let me be clear. These are very important conversations to be had, but are not conversations to be crammed into a 6-hour call, into a single phone call. They are meant to happen over time. Marriage is serious, and you cannot get to properly know someone through a rushed marathon call. A crash conversation is not a substitute for real vetting. At this point, he tells her that he's going to sell his apartment and spend more time with her in Dallas. He claims it will make about $500,000 in the sale of the apartment. And then immediately after that conversation, he calls her asking for a loan of $5,000, to which she loans him. And I'd like to point out here that they got married to each other without both of their parents knowing. Onyeka's family were not aware that she was married at this point. After the marriage, they both go back to their different locations, and one day he calls her to say he has bad news. He tells her that the Danish IRS had contacted him and told him that he owes $318,000 in taxes. And then comes a pressure point. He tells her that if he doesn't pay the tax bill, it's going to affect his chances of getting the green card. Once again, emotional manipulation. Onyeka starts to panic. At this point, Onyeka admits something very important. She says that at this point, she realized that she was stuck in a toxic cycle of emotional manipulation. And yet, despite that realization, after some time, he managed to talk her into loaning him $15,000. So let's pause and do the maths. $6,000 initially, then $5,000 after that, now $15,000. That's $26 within roughly 6 months of the relationship. She says she couldn't send the money all at once. The maximum she could send per day was $3,000. So she sent it over 5 days. And she said something that really bothered me at this point. She said every single day he would message her and say, hey, don't forget to send a payment. And honestly, that would have irritated me beyond belief. She said everything about this felt deeply wrong in her soul, but she went along with it. She then said that she told her parents that they were going through financial hiccups. And here's where I'm thinking to myself, who are they? Why is this your burden, Onyeka? Why? For a guy you just met less than 6 months ago. And at this point in her narration, she admits something very critical. She says that she never told her family or friends that she was loaning him money. She only told them that he had financial struggles like his taxes. And this is an important lesson because when you hide key details about your relationship, the people who love you cannot give you sound advice. They can only respond to the version of the story that you present. And the reason that you leave certain things out is because you know deep down that they will challenge it. They will question it and they will warn you. But she desperately wanted to marry him. Anyways, by this point, her parents were bonding with him, buying him gifts, even something as symbolic as a Nigerian stick that he had once admired. He took her dad out and formally asked for her hand in marriage, even though they had legally been married. Her dad even broke kola nut, which is a gesture in the Igbo tradition in Nigeria which signals acceptance into the family. What surprised me whilst listening to this story is that even at this point in the story, despite all the financial stress and burden that this man had put on Onyeka, she said that she was still happy and she was in love with him. And that to me was just crazy. I mean, the level of infatuation you have to be in to not spot these red flags is beyond me. Then less than a week after loaning him $15,000, she loans him another $3,000. So in March 2023 alone, she gives him $18,000. $18,000. So that's $6,000 plus $5,000 plus $15,000 plus $3,000. That's a total of $29,000 within 9 months of dating. Anyway, shortly after that, they go to Cabo for her friend's wedding and she pays for most of it. At this point, like I said, they're legally married to each other. But here's the thing. Onyeka had never spoken to his father or mother. She never met them or spoke to them before marrying him. He had been to Dallas several times and finally she goes to Denmark. So she finally arrives in Denmark for the very first time. This is the moment that everything should start lining up, where reality should match the story. He takes her out with his childhood friends and their partners. They go to dinner. He shows her the area he grew up in, where he was baptized, where he went to elementary school. It all looks very intentional, very believable. She meets his parents and according to her, she bonds with her almost immediately. She brings gifts for her in-laws and they show her his childhood photos. On the surface, everything feels warm and welcoming. But she makes an observation that should have stopped her in her tracks. She says they lived in a very, very humble home. Now remember, this is the same man that claimed royal lineage. A humble home should raise questions. But rather, Onyeka rationalized it. She said they are billionaires who live modest lives. She said people are allowed to spend their money however they want, and just like that, she dismissed it. Like, really? On that same trip, she also noticed that he didn't have a good relationship with his dad or his younger sister. They barely spoke, the atmosphere was tense. And this is such an important lesson. You must study how your partner interacts with their family. Strained relationships can sometimes signal deeper character issues. It doesn't mean someone is automatically bad, but it does mean you need to ask questions. Understand the why. Don't just turn a blind eye because you're in love. After Denmark, they travel to Nigeria where he's introduced to her extended family, including her grandmother. Everyone loved him. People wanted photos with him. He fully immersed himself in the culture. And that made her fall even more in love with him. Not too long later, he comes back to her asking her for more money. By now, her savings are dwindling. But she still loans him another $3,000. So let's go over the amount she's loaned him. First, $6,000. Then the $5,000, then $15,000, $3,000, now another $3,000. That's $32,000. And remember, all this is within a relatively short period of time. Obviously, because he was planning on moving to Dallas, he had planned to sell his apartment. And he says that because the sale is about to go through, bear in mind it hasn't materialized yet, he says they should celebrate the potential sale. And guess what? He suggests a trip. This is someone that doesn't have any money. This is someone that's loaning money. He suggests a trip. She's nervous because there is no money, and this is where things take a dangerous turn. He suggests that they use her credit card. She later admits that this is the most idiotic thing she did. And she's right. He convinced her to take on debt for a trip that he suggested, while the balance piled in her name. So he gets the lifestyle while she gets the liability. Anyway, she agrees to book a trip to Portugal. And while on holiday, Onyeka opens up about how she's no longer enjoying her accounting job. And this man convinces her to quit. He reassures her that they have money coming in from the sale of the property. Remember, that hasn't materialized yet. But Onyeka believes him and she quits a $150,000 job. At this point in her narration, Onyeka says that she doesn't regret leaving the job, but she regrets the timing. And honestly, this was one of the most alarming decisions in the entire story. Because how do you rely on a man that you have been loaning tens of thousands of dollars to? Relying on a man that owes you $32,000 and that has not even paid you a dime. You quit your job for that man. Anyways, guys, from Portugal, they fly to Miami, and for most part of this trip, she's using her funds. So besides all the money that she's loaned to him, she's also incurring costs left, right and center on these trips that are not by force, that are not necessary. Because why are you traveling constantly when you don't have money? Why are you living a jet-setting lifestyle with no financial stability? Like, why? He loved luxury, he loved to travel, he loved appearances, but he didn't have money to support that lifestyle. And we have seen this pattern before, just like in the previous story I covered with Dr. Wilkinson, where he convinced Sharitza to buy a new house while contributing absolutely nothing. Ladies, please use your brain. Do not take on debt for someone else, especially someone who is not pulling their weight or contributing equally. After Miami, they go back to Denmark for his mom's 70th birthday, and this time she meets the entire family, including the older sister he claimed he didn't get along with. And guess what? According to Onyeka, the older sister was kind, warm, lovely, nothing like the villain he had painted her to be. That's another inconsistency. Danny informs her that he has another bad news, that the Danish IRS had frozen his bank account and that he was only allowed to spend $4,000 a month. At this point, she still hasn't told anyone about the fact that she loans him money. She says she wanted to protect his image and he actively discouraged her from talking to her family about it, saying that they will view him differently. And that's the loyalty, if you remember at the start, that's the loyalty he was talking about. Staying loyal to him and keeping quiet. And this is just textbook behavior for these con men. It's isolation, control, and secrecy. These men do not want people around you who will ask questions and speak sense into you. They will isolate you from those people. She books yet another trip for him to come to Dallas, and at this point she's supporting him financially. She admits that they were struggling financially, but she cared so much about him and was deeply in love about him and cared more about him than the money. They travel back to Denmark again and attend a champagne party with his friends. His best friend invites them out later that night, and Onyeka said that she would like to go. But for some strange reason, her ex-husband doesn't want to go. And then the best friend casually says something that changes everything. He says he probably doesn't want to run into his enemies from his past gambling addiction. She freezes. Gambling addiction? She turns to the friend and says, "What gambling addiction?" And the friend responds, "You didn't know?" The moment the best friend mentions the gambling addiction, she goes into full panic mode. She said it was freezing outside, but yet she was sweating uncontrollably. She said his best friend was furious because he thought Onyeka was already aware about this. He even admitted to her that her ex-husband had borrowed money from him, even though that was 10 years ago, and he did pay it back. That behavior alone tells you that this wasn't new. This was a pattern for this man. She confronts him immediately. She had no concern about making a scene, and he tells her that the gambling addiction was 10 years ago, when he was young, dumb and stupid. And when she asks him about her money, he assures her that he will never gamble it away. He paints himself as a man who has been through ups and downs, but is now reformed. And yet, despite all this, she still travels to Bucharest with this man for New Year's, a trip she paid for entirely. I'm sorry, but why are you funding international trips for a man who is financially broke, in debt and battling addiction? January 2024 comes, he has another Danish IRS hearing. He tells her that now there's another 18-month hold on his account. He even shows her an email as proof. She's unhappy and frustrated, and he even assures her not to worry because she's now doing well in a realtor career. Notice the shift. This problem has quietly become her responsibility. By February 10, 2024, they cancelled a planned trip due to their financial struggles. Honestly, thank God they cancelled, and instead they decide to go for dinner in Dallas to celebrate their anniversary. And what does he do? He orders a $400 to $500 bottle of wine. And when she questions it, he says it's their anniversary. Let me be clear, with the financial mess they were in, they shouldn't even have been in a restaurant. They should have been at home cooking to save some money. Because if wine alone is already $400 to $500, imagine the bill by the end of the night. They end up spending $800 at dinner. Then they decide to head to a cocktail bar where Onyeka's friends are having a celebratory birthday dinner for a friend. And her ex-husband decides he's going to buy shots for everyone. This is someone that doesn't have money. At this point, she's irritated, he's extremely drunk, and when she asks him to slow down, he snaps and says, "Who do you think you are to tell me what I can and can't drink?" And he goes on to accuse her of disrespecting him in public. They get home, a huge argument breaks out. He tells her she embarrassed him, disrespected him, and he storms out of the home and he gets an hotel. She said this was a side of him she had never seen before. And this is why you cannot get to know someone properly within a few months. Just to go back, when they decided to get married, Onyeka said that they had 6 hours on the call to get to know each other. This was within the first 3-4 months of knowing each other. And at the end of that call, he said to her, "Do you still want to marry me?" And she said yes, and they went ahead. But 6 hours of conversation is not vetting. Thorough vetting saves you from heartbreak, trauma, and debt. He spends about $1,000 on the hotel room, so on their anniversary night alone, almost $2,000 was spent for someone that doesn't have money, but someone that's being loaned money to. For me, that level of reckless spending is a massive red flag. You cannot build a future with someone who doesn't know when to rein the spending in. Someone who treats every season like a spending spree will drag you into financial debt. A few days later, she receives a message that nearly broke her. One of her friends tells her that her ex owes her husband $200,000. Onyeka says she couldn't breathe at this point. When she confronted him, he said he invested the money in crypto and watches, and that the friend is being unreasonable about profits. But when she checks with her friend directly, the story completely falls apart. That friend, who she later refers to as Crypto, confirms the truth. The money was never returned. The wallet the funds were sent to were linked to gambling activity since 2023. That's when reality finally hits her. He was never reformed. He never stopped gambling. She collapses to the floor and cries, and when she confronts him again, he finally admits the truth. He's still gambling. Crypto and his wife, they respond with grace. They could have gone to the police, but instead they offer support. That alone is astonishing, considering the damage done. She signs him up for Gamblers Anonymous and attends meetings with him. Crypto offers to hire a private investigator to look into him, and Onyeka agrees. And here is the part that genuinely stunned me. At this point in her narration, Onyeka said she still loves him. I was shocked to hear that.
And I did feel so ill and disgusted, but I'm still so in love with him. Despite the lies, despite everything, the love was still 100% there.
Despite the lies, despite the money he owes her, despite him defrauding her friends of $200,000, despite the reckless spending while he was drowning financially, she says, "I made a vow to him in sickness and in health." And I was honestly shocked, because love is not by force. Love does not ruin you financially. Love does not gamble away your livelihood. Love does not isolate you from family. Love does not lie, manipulate, and drain you. Cash flow is survival. Cash is king. And when someone plays with that, they are playing with your life. A vow requires two people acting in good faith. If one person is reckless, deceitful, and destructive, the vow is already broken. This was not love. This was emotional manipulation disguised as commitment. Ladies, please learn from this. Anyways, Crypto comes back with findings from the private investigator. And the first thing he confirms is that there is no criminal history. But here's the real bombshell. This man never went to the Olympics. Not once, not twice, never. And honestly, you did not need a private investigator to figure that out. A simple Google search would have done the job. Onyeka admitted that she felt embarrassed. She kept asking herself, why did she not look up this information? I wonder the same. And once that doubt entered her mind, everything started to unravel. She went back through their WhatsApp conversations. She started scrolling. And then she saw the photo of the apartment that he claimed he owned. The apartment he had sent her at the very beginning of their relationship. The apartment he claimed he had sold. and that he was going to make a $500,000 profit on. She downloaded the image and reverse searched it. And guess what came up? An interior designer's home. That apartment was never his. She was stunned. She decides to confront him and ask him, did you go to the Olympics? He says yes. She asks him again, did you go to the Olympics? He says yes. She says, fine, I'm calling your mum. And the moment she dials the phone and it rings once, and suddenly the truth spills out and he says, I didn't go to the Olympics. Like, who lies about something like that? That is not a small lie. That's identity fabrication. She also confronts him about the apartment that he claimed to live in. She asks for proof about the other apartments that he said he owned. She said that he showed her a document in Danish, which he translated to her. And let that sink in, guys, because she's accusing someone of lying. And at the same time, she's relying on that same person to translate document that's meant to prove their innocence. There is no third-party verification. There is no independent confirmation. Only vibes and trust for someone who has lied about so many things. And let me say this clearly. It's incredibly easy to forge documents today. With AI, PDFs, templates, anyone can create official-looking paperwork. Because if a man can lie about Olympics, honestly, he can lie about anything. Yet, despite all of this, she says she's still deeply in love with him. She says she cannot imagine her life without him. At this point, she admits that she should have called her family and informed them about everything, but she didn't, because she was in love. She even said something that really disturbed me. She said the disease is the enemy, not him, that they need to fight it together. No, sis. The disease is not the enemy. This man is the problem. This is not a we issue. This is a him issue. He needs to sort himself out. Because unless someone wants to change, nothing will change. And even she admits it, that when it came to time to make amends with Crypto and his wife, the suggestion should have come from him and not her. Because the truth is, responsibility cannot be outsourced. Grown man like that should take responsibility for his actions. And at this point, with everything going on, because of the 90-day visa limit, they take another trip. This time to Colombia. At this point on the trip, he already has a ring, but the timing feels wrong with everything that has just surfaced. She's already married to him, but she still wants a proposal. And there on holiday, he proposes. He promises to be a better man. She says yes. She calls it the happiest moment of her life, and she said it was the easiest yes she had ever given. And I genuinely cannot wrap my head around that. Because how is it an easy yes after this much deception and lies? After this much financial damage? She said she had seen his flaws and nobody was perfect. This is not imperfection, this is character. She was so fixated on them being together that she ignored every warning sign. A proposal was not the next step, but then again, they were already married anyways. They were already legally married. All this was just formalities. For about a month, things seemed calm. Then for her 30th birthday, they traveled to Panama. The moment they land, there are multiple missed calls from his sister. She tells him his father has died. She starts looking for flights for them to return to Dallas. And he says, no, let's stay. It's your birthday. The funeral is not for another week. They stay. Eventually, they attend the funeral in Denmark. And only then does he shed some tears. Prior to that, he didn't show any emotion. At this point, he still owes her a lot of money. They've just come back from Panama. His dad's just passed away. She decides to ask him, when are you going to pay my money back? And he says, I'll pay you back. But then one day she walks past the balcony and she sees him on a gambling website. Her heart sinks. He tries to explain it away and give him different excuses for not paying her back. That, oh, he needs to help his mom. Meanwhile, Onyeka has been carrying the household bill, struggling financially to keep the relationship afloat. Remember at the beginning, she said she'll marry him even if he had no money. Ladies, be careful what you confess. Because struggle love is not easy. Love is sweeter when you're not financially drained. He honestly must have felt like he hit the jackpot when she said that to him. His work visa gets approved, but that doesn't solve the emotional and financial chaos. Argument starts to explode. He questions her tone, her words, and even how she makes him feel. Less of a man because she's carrying the relationship. She has a work event one night and goes there and she breaks down completely. She's crying, bawling her eyes out. And this is what toxic people do. They don't just affect your relationship. They affect every part of your life, your career, your focus, your peace of mind. Anyways, one night she manages to get hold of his bank card and checks the balance. 34 cents. That's it. 34 cents was all he had in his account. Mr. Jet Setter, Mr. Trip all over the world, 34 cents. A man who claimed wealth, prestige, royalty, and luxury didn't even have $1 to his name. He had stopped her telling anyone about his gambling addiction. He said he didn't want her family viewing him differently. Even when his mum came to visit them in Dallas, he stopped her from telling his mum, saying she's old and she's sick. He isolated her from support. The only person she could speak to was his best friend. At the end of the day, that's still his friend, who could still be loyal to him. And that's the problem. Ladies, if something feels wrong, please speak up. Talk to your family, your friends. Don't let anyone shut you down. By staying silent, she only made the situation worse and trapped herself. And what made it even harder was that she was married. When you're married, it makes it even much more harder to leave because you feel like there's too much at stake. Remember, I spoke about sunk cost fallacy in my last video, and this is exactly what he counted on. He moved fast, pushing for marriage, after about only 3 months together, knowing that once the vows were said, it would be much harder for her to step away. She confronts him and shows him a picture of his account balance. He's shocked, silent, and he denies gambling. And even at this point, she admits she's still blinded by love, still brainwashed. Despite everything, they continue their relationship and start planning towards their wedding. She wanted a traditional wedding in Nigeria and a white wedding in Portugal. She assumed her parents would cover the traditional one whilst they focused on the white wedding, but to her surprise, her mum called her, informing her that he said he would pay towards the traditional wedding in Nigeria, that he will cover the cost. She confronts him, asking him why he said that, knowing fully well they had a lot of debt and they still had to pay crypto back his money. Later on, to help improve his credit score in the US, she adds him to her credit card. He wasn't supposed to spend anything on it. It was only meant to be for groceries, but she adds him anyways. Let that sink in. Adding a gambling addict to your credit card. Fast forward a few months, she sees $7,000 in cash advance. When she confronts him, he admits he relapsed and he went back into gambling. At one point, he had promised Onyeka's mom to send $10,000 towards a traditional wedding. But when the money never materialized, Onyeka confronted him. And he turns to her and says, "Do you know what? I'm done. I'm done with this marriage. I want a divorce. Let's find peace on our own." He packed his bag and booked a ticket to Denmark. By this point, his green card was already approved. Onyeka was in shock. She couldn't believe that he was the one calling things off. In desperation, she clung to the marriage, insisting that they could navigate through any obstacle together. But he had had enough. She even tried to stop him by hiding his passport. But he got an emergency passport and left her. He even sent her a message saying, "I don't care, you can tell everyone." Think about that for a moment. He got everything he wanted. Her money, her support, and the green card he needed. And then he just walked away, showing no empathy, showing no remorse, no regard for her feelings. And ladies, this is exactly why you need to speak up when someone tries to shut you down. They manipulate you to get what they want, and the moment they achieve it, they run without looking back. Finally, she tells her sister and her best friend about the money that he's taken from her. And to her surprise, her sister told her that he had also taken $3,000 from her as well. She was heartbroken that he had taken money from her sister. In that moment, she said something shifted. She said she felt out of love. And that the spell that had kept her blinded was finally broken.
So my little sister looks at me and she says, "He took $3,000 from me." And I am just silent for like 5 seconds. And I want you all to picture a horror movie in your mind and picture the screams in that horror movie. I can guarantee you the screams that were heard from me were 10 times worse. It was the most heartbreaking moment of my entire life. My little sister is like, she's my world, and to know that he took advantage of her was just, it was so heartbreaking. And in that moment, I 100% fell out of love with him. And it was like the spell that was on me had been broken.
She decided to contact her friends, her cousins, her co-workers in order to confirm whether he had borrowed money from them too. And to her surprise, he used several different excuses for different people, saying that he needed the money to buy an Aston Martin, a limited edition Rolex for the wedding, for land, to buy gifts for Onyeka, or claiming that his Danish bank account was frozen. And each person he borrowed money from, they were told to keep it from Onyeka. She called his sister and her mother and she shared everything with them and they were horrified. They knew about his gambling problems years ago, but they thought he had stopped. Onyeka said that she felt like the family should have shared information with her earlier. But the truth is, the family owes you nothing. When entering a marriage, the responsibility to vet and question lies with you. At this point, she also asked about the supposed royal title he had claimed. They were shocked and clarified it was false. She admits that she hadn't thought to ask earlier, and this just goes to show how love can really cloud your judgment. His older sister eventually called her and explained everything. She explained that he had serious gambling issue to the extent that her being a police officer had to step in because he had involved himself with extremely dangerous people who had targeted the family, targeted their home, and she had to step in to negotiate with them. And when she set up a payment plan, her brother failed to uphold the payment plan and fled to China, where he continued his fraudulent behavior. So this behavior was not only manifested in Europe, he took it to Asia, then America. So it's across 3 continents. She also said to her that although he claimed to have received help 10 years ago, she said that the therapist and the professionals who treated him said that it was the worst gambling addiction they had ever seen in their career. That speaks volume. After this, Onyeka decided to reach out to his ex-girlfriend. She confirmed that they had been together for 7 years and not the 4 months he had claimed. And remember December 21st at the beginning that I told you to remember, where he refused her coming to Denmark to be with him? The ex-girlfriend said that they were still together at that point. So at the point Onyeka was dating him, he was still with his ex-girlfriend. The ex-girlfriend confirmed that he stole money from her family, from her friends. That's when Onyeka finally told her family about everything. Up until that moment, they didn't even know that she was legally married to him. And this is why it's important to carry your family along. She was crying on the phone, completely broken. And then she asked her father, please tell me that he didn't scam you too. To which her father paused and said, it's okay. We'll talk about that later. Which told her everything. He had scammed her dad too. She was devastated and heartbroken. Then she remembered a wealthy Danish man who was like a mentor to her ex. So she called him. And the man confirmed that her ex had scammed him out of $30,000. When she asked him why he didn't mention it to her, he said to her that he thought she was in on it as well. Simply because she was Nigerian, she must have known about it. So not only did this man steal her money, destroy her marriage and traumatize her family, he also damaged her reputation and dragged her name through the mud. And that's what con men do. They don't just take your money. They take away your peace, your trust, your credibility, and sometimes your dignity. And that's why stories like this matter. Honestly, guys, what do I think of this all? I'm honestly glad that Onyeka did not have a child with him, because there's nothing worse than being permanently tied to someone like that. I'm also glad that she didn't put him on the deed of her house. She said she was about to do that right before the divorce. And honestly, that was divine intervention, because if she had done that, he would have had a legal stake in a house he didn't work for. Another thing I really want to note here is that we really need to stop glorifying the things we see on social media. Onyeka was clearly moved by the soft life aesthetic. Pasta and lobster dinners, luxury hotel, traveling, different countries every few weeks. And I get it, it looks good. But this story is a perfect reminder that what you see on social media is not always real life. Social media will show you champagne moments while hiding credit card debt, loans, and the financial chaos behind the scenes. They were living a high life they couldn't afford, spending money they didn't have, and keeping up appearances at all cost. All of those costs add up fast. Honestly, whilst watching this, I kept thinking to myself that Onyeka has traveled to more countries within 1 year than I have in my lifetime. And that should tell you something. Honestly, take what you see online with a pinch of salt. A lot of people have been saying online that Onyeka allowed her ex-husband to get away with all this because he was white, and that she was excited that a white man wanted to date her. Some even suggested that she never imagined that a white man could scam her. I want to be very clear about this. Being a con man is not unique to one race. Scammers come in all race, all nationalities, all backgrounds.
Ladies, this one is for you. So we have thousands of you in our inbox and you're all looking for white men. Well, I'm going to tell you, don't date a white man just for status. A white man is not going to change your life. We are just the same as a black guy. A white man can be broke. A white guy can cheat. A white man can have a wife and pretend he is not married so he can have another girlfriend. So we are exactly the same as the black race. So please do not come in my inbox saying you just want a white guy because you think your life will change just by dating this white guy. It won't. A lot of white guys are broke. A lot of white guys are cheaters. So this is what I've come on here to say today to you ladies especially, because a lot of you are in our inbox and your life will not change just by dating a white guy. So thank you. Take care.
Do not give anyone free pass because of their race. Scrutinize people. Study them. Watch patterns, not promises. Onyeka was clearly taken in by his looks and his charms. And this is exactly what Sharitza said in my last video. Charm. And I said it then and I'll say it now. Charm is deceptive. Charm is not character. Someone being smooth, attractive, well-spoken, socially impressive does not mean they are trustworthy. You have to study the individual and not the image they present. Onyeka also said she resented his family for not telling her about the gambling addiction and his past. But here's the uncomfortable truth. They did not owe her anything. There were more than enough red flags right in front of her. She chose to ignore them because she was in love, in awe of him. Love can blind you, and when it does, even the loudest warning sign get muted. Even if his family had warned her, I genuinely believe that Onyeka would have just brushed it to the side. I also saw a clip where it was mentioned that Onyeka was warned by her loved ones, but she shut them down. Take a look.
Good afternoon. After getting off my live last night, I received a DM. If we remember in part 1, she had mentioned how she was traveling and she was meeting up with a friend, I believe in Barcelona. That friend is the one that DM'd me, or should I say ex-friend. She DM'd me with some information. She would like to be anonymous, so I'm going to respect her wishes, but I have the DM on my laptop and I'm reading it, okay? If it sounds choppy, it's because of identifying information. So the DM reads, I used to be close friends with Onyeka and even went on a double date with her and her ex-husband. When we were friends, I told her to be careful of that man and it seemed too good to be true. And he was suspicious and she wanted to hear nothing of it. Shocker. Her best friend, Natalie, that's the girl who made the video yesterday, that she mentioned in her story, was there when we were all out to dinner 4 months after she met her ex and was gassing her up and feeding into her delusions, telling her he is her Prince Charming and who she asked God for. So now we know why, Natalie's considered the best friend, okay? So yeah, she had people in her life, including her brother-in-law, married to her sister, question her ex's Olympian status, and instead she just cut some of us off who questioned the legitimacy of their relationship. So there were people in her circle that were questioning the legitimacy, and instead of her to take heed, she cut them off. When we met her and Martin for dinner, she said he had just asked her dad for her hand in marriage and asked us if we were talking about that yet. Mind you, it had been a couple months. Mind you, my husband and I just started dating December 2022 and met the same month she met Martin, and we were like, that is way too fast, and we are just enjoying dating. And we met for our double date March of 2023 after they had gotten married. She also cut me off as a friend because my husband, boyfriend at the time, didn't want to buy a house from her. I'm the same friend in her first video she met up with in Barcelona the day after she met Martin in Croatia. I forgot to mention in the beginning, but this friend is a person of color. They're not black, they're not white, right? And she mentioned about the fetishization, which is what we were talking about, that Onyeka would tell her, quote, I love us and our European men. And we were like, that is so weird to say out loud. And this person met her husband, who is European, but he does live in the US for work. So yes, so that is the DM. Moral of the story, if your friends are also questioning some shit, you should listen, because here we are, what, 2-3 years later, after she already questioned about this man, and now Miss Girl is literally paying for it.
This is another hard truth. No one can force you to leave a toxic relationship. No one can rescue you if you refuse to see what's happening. At one point, Onyeka said her friend never told her to leave the marriage. No one can force you. Your eyes have to open on their own. You have to save yourself. She says she survived a story that she never asked to be a part of. And that's true. But the reality is no scammer is ever going to ask you for permission to be involved in their scam story. No scammer is going to ask you that. They'll never say, do you want to be part of a story where I scam you thousands of dollars? They don't ask. They just observe. They study and assess whether you're someone they can take from and get away with it. It's on you to be alert. It's on you to be discerning so that you don't unknowingly become characters in a story you never signed up for. In my previous video, Sharitza and Onyeka are women who are highly successful in their careers. Onyeka was a manager at one of the big accounting firms, KPMG. She was a manager before the age of 30. Being a manager in these places is incredibly difficult. And she had a master's degree in accounting. So she was an intelligent woman. But this is where I want us to really pause, because intelligence, discernment, and wisdom, they're not the same thing. You can be academically brilliant, career-driven, and accomplished, yet still lack discernment when it comes to people. Success in your profession does not automatically translate to sound judgment in your personal life. And for me, one part that stood out is that despite Onyeka's intelligence, he was a manager in a top firm, having an audit background, a profession that trains you to question, to be skeptical, and to verify information. She didn't apply those skills in her personal life. For instance, she sent a man she barely knew her passport details. She wasn't skeptical when he came up with all manners of information, like being royalty, going to the Olympics. Auditors are taught never to take things at face value. That's what we were taught. I was once an auditor as well at a big four accounting company, so I know how an auditor's mind works. Yet when love entered the picture, those professional skills were not applied. And that right there, guys, shows you that love can blind even the most intelligent people. After a while, he starts blowing up her phone, saying they should get back together. He sends her multiple messages trying to reel her back in. She responds with the following message. I think it's only right that you hear it from her mouth. Take a look.
And then he texted me, okay, I get it. I love you. That's all. I won't do that again. My heart is bleeding, and I don't understand that you want to give up on love. But if that's your decision, so be it. Goodbye, babe. It was always just love. Even me coming by. And then I sent him a text because, I've been ignoring him for weeks now. So I was like, maybe I need to just send him a message so he knows how I really feel. And this is the last message I have ever sent him. Do not ever show up to my home again. I do not want to see you. I do not want to be with you. I do not love you anymore. Nothing you can say or do will ever change that. You make me sick. Someone capable of the evil you've committed on my life and the lives of so many is not capable of redemption. This divorce is happening whether you want it to or not. And then in all caps, leave me the fuck alone. And all he responded was, I understand now.
He signed the divorce papers on November the 4th, 2025, and that chapter finally closed. You might be wondering what her Danish ex-husband is up to now. Take a look.
I cannot believe I'm making this video so soon after finishing my series, but I just received word from a woman that was conned by my ex in Tulum just last week. I'm sure some of you have seen the TikTok circulating from individuals that have seen him in Tulum. If you haven't, I'm just gonna play a short clip for you guys to see.
So guys, Danish deception guy is hiding out in Tulum, where I live. And he is scamming multiple people from the Run Club. Different women. Like in the last month, it is very apparent that he has no intention of stopping this, but he's here.
There was another TikTok that was circulating that included actual photos of my ex, and the woman that reached out to me is actually the woman that's in this photo. She told me he's telling people that he founded a tech company that he sold to Facebook, and he moved to Tulum to retire, and he moved there from Dallas after ending an engagement with a woman that comes from Nigerian royalty. You cannot make this up. Out of respect to her, I'm not going to talk about how he conned her or how much he took from her, but what I will say is that there was another woman that reached out to her that said that he physically stole money from her, and when she confronted him, he got very, very aggressive, and she was actually fearful of him. The whole purpose of me making this video is to bring awareness. This girl was not conned last year. She was conned last week, which means it happened after my series was put out, which means that he truly believes he's invincible, and hearing that he's acting very aggressive really does cause me some concern. So try to share this, and let's put this out to as many people as we can, and I hope you guys stay safe.
For me, guys, this wasn't a Danish deception. This was the Danish Delulu. Onyeka wasn't deceived at any point. The red flags were visible. They were right in front of her. She just refused to pick them up. She was living in delusion land, choosing fantasy over facts, feelings over reality. Every warning sign was there, but she ignored them, excused them, or explained them away because she wanted the story to work so badly. She refused to see the red flags, and she ended up paying for them in the most expensive way possible. So let this be a lesson. Be vigilant. Do not romanticize red flags. Do not confuse charm for substance. And do not let anyone isolate you from people who genuinely care about you. Please stay safe, like, comment, and subscribe. Till next time, guys. Bye.